Have you ever thought about putting real estate in either a trust or an LLC? Well, stay tuned and let's figure out if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea. Welcome. I'm Heath Albritton alongside Justin Lee.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's going to be good.
Kind of get to know us and who we are, how we do business. We're going to talk all things mortgage. We're going to try to cover everything, Justin. So,
Loans for homes.
Loans for homes. All right, welcome to the Loans for Homes show. Today we're going to talk about trust and LLCs and whether or not you should put your real estate in one of those, Justin. And is it a good idea? What are the pros? What are the cons? All that good stuff.
And how do you do it? I mean, the earlier you tell your lender in the process, the better, right? That's something that's extremely important for how we set up your loan, what investor we deal with, and how we close.
Yeah, so that's typically when we find out, the buyer forgets to tell us that, and then, here we are, we get 2 or 3 days out from closing. Oh, we want to put this in our trust. We want to put this in an LLC. And then it's not just a simple flip of the switch and it goes in there. Documents have to be prepared. Documents have to be approved, reviewed, and the closing documents have to be set up correctly. So it's not like it's a difficult process, but there is a process behind the scenes. So
there's extra steps in our legal department, and we've got to review it and make sure that it's eligible to be closed in your trust.
100%. Now, let's talk about types of trust. So there are 2 types of trust. One is an inter vivos revocable trust, and the other is an inter vivos irrevocable trust. So lenders, when you put your property in a trust, they want it in an inter vivos revocable trust, not an irrevocable. So what that basically means is that you can make changes to the trust on a revocable one. Also, it does not give you creditor protection like a irrevocable does. So the reason companies like ours and every other lender out there doesn't want it in an irrevocable trust, Justin, is because they can't foreclose on the property. The property is protected from creditors.
Right, so we're taking the house as collateral, right? So if anything went wrong or you couldn't make the payments, in theory the bank or the mortgage company needs to be able to take the house back.
So putting a house in the trust, first of all, let's talk about that. What are the benefits, right? Probate avoidance, that's the biggest one. I tell everybody, if you don't want to go through probate, set up a trust, right? The last thing you want, if something happens to you, is for your heirs to have to wait for 1 year for this thing to go through probate. The state dictates what happens to the house, who gets what, all that good stuff. It's just a pain. So probate avoidance is good. The other is privacy protection. If you don't want somebody finding out your business and seeing, hey, let's see what properties that Jeff Smith or whoever owns, right? Well, if that's the case, then you're going to obviously come up, your trust is going to be called whatever. Somebody can't go trace that down unless they know the specific name of your trust. So it does have privacy protection. The next thing is asset protection, Justin. So if you put your house in the trust and you get sued by someone and it's in the trust, guess what? It's protected.
It's significantly a separate entity.
It is.
So it's not you in theory on
It's
paper,
not you
so
individually.
you've got protection that way.
Absolutely. The next thing is incapacity planning, right? If you become incapacitated, then the successor trustee can manage the property without court intervention, which is huge. That's a big thing nowadays, right? If you
It is, yep.
You have relatives that are getting older, that's important. Potential benefit, tax benefits, maybe, right? Talk to a CPA about that. And then controlled distribution. Trusts allow you to stipulate how and when beneficiaries receive the property, which is key. Again, probate avoidance. So a revocable living trust, again, call it what you want, right? So when the trust documents get executed, Justin, you provide a copy, all pages, not just 1 or 2 pages, but all pages of the trust. We're going to send that to our trust department. They're going to then review that trust, Justin, to make sure it meets those secondary market guidelines. That way, when we sell this loan, it's going to become a sellable loan, and that we can still perform a foreclosure if someone defaults on their mortgage.
Right, and primarily we're looking to make sure it satisfies the Fannie Freddie requirements. So basically when you're adhering to the Fannie Freddie requirements to close in a trust, you want to know that the title is being taken in the name of trust, but the person is still the individual creditor that the mortgage is tied to. So there's a revocable and an irrevocable trust. So we don't see that many that are irrevocable, right? It's very rare. Most of the time when you're looking at trust, it is revocable.
It is rare, yes. It is rare. So most attorneys will advise, again, because you lose that control. It's pretty hard to pull a property out of an irrevocable trust and you lose all control. In most cases, you no longer become, on an irrevocable, you're not the trustee of your trust. You're going to have someone else that's going to be a trustee. So they have to sign everything. They got to approve everything. So in most cases, talk to an attorney or whomever, but you want to avoid, creating and putting property obviously into an irrevocable trust.
Right. And not every bank allows you to close in a trust. Sometimes the title company or attorney might advise that you quit claiming to the trust after the fact. But for us, it's pretty common. We're used to closing in our trust, and we're used to working up with investors who'd like to put their properties in an LLC. An LLC operates in a similar fashion as the trust. It's just something that's done for investment properties and not your primary.
So let's talk about that. LLCs, limited liability companies or corporations, right? It's mainly for protection from liabilities. So Justin mentioned, you cannot put your LLC in a primary residence or a second home in most cases. It is for investment properties, and we can do that. A lot of lenders cannot do that, Justin, but we allow you to do that. Now, you're still going to be personally applying and personally obligated on the loan, just like you would as a trust. But you're going to put the title in the name of the LLC. Again, privacy protection, some asset protection potentially, but mainly it's liability protection. So if you've got investment property, most people would advise to put that in an LLC. Doesn't really give you a tax break, not to my knowledge. Again, ask a CPA. But if you're renting your house out, especially short-term rentals, you're going to have people in and out all the time. Somebody falls, they get hurt. Whatever, right?
That's
we know
what I was going
things
to go
can
with
happen.
it. Is a lot more the Airbnb routes. When the nightly rentals is where we're seeing a lot more people wanting to look at the LLC and title in the LLC.
And you don't know what people, if you're not there to control and what happens, you don't know what happens at the property, right? So you want to relinquish that liability, turn it over to your LLC. So that's a very good thing. Once again, you got to create that LLC, Justin, in a timely fashion. You've got to get the EIN number from the state. All that's got to be set up. We want a copy of the LLC documents, the operating agreement in most cases, everything that's set up for that LLC for us to close, put the title in the LLC.
Just like with the trust, like we were talking about, it needs to be created before you make application, before you write a contract. You need to know that you want to put it in the LLC.
Right. So just remember that. Now, let's talk about LLCs and trust in terms of people call us every day. Okay, if I don't want to go through that process, I'll just quit claim it later after closing, right? Now, we technically as lenders can't say, oh, sure, that's fine to do that, because it does technically void the terms of your deed of trust, Justin, if you quit claim this property from your individual names to either a trust or an LLC, right? It could accelerate what's called a due on sale clause. You've changed the terms of of your deed of trust, meaning you're no longer the owner, right? You're transferring it to a trust or an LLC in this case, and that violates the deed of trust. People do it every day, however, and in most cases, most lenders typically will not say anything as long as there's no default on the loan. If you ever default on the loan, that could become a problem. They could accelerate the note and call it due and payable. Hey, you got to pay us off right now. Some lenders I have seen and heard in the past would notify you of such and give you a certain period of time to quit claim the property back to your name individually. But every lender is different. So just a food for thought on that.
And we'll go into more detail down the road in a different episode, but I do think Fannie Mae has become more lenient on that as far as quit claiming to after closing, but we'll do a different segment on that down the road.
And Justin, one thing we recently learned through the process too, there are some states out there that are starting to tax individuals when they transfer the ownership from their individual names over to an entity after closing. We have seen that lately, where tax implications can be a factor.
Yeah, I think FinCEN is something new that's come out, and I do believe it's the Supreme Court actually pushed back on it, but I mean, they're able to audit and kind of see when people are quit claiming it. In certain states like Florida, become a little stricter.
And just like anything, if you transfer ownership, they want their portion, right? They want to be paid. Where's my tax money? So that's where they're coming from on that. They technically don't care. They just want the revenue. Right,
it's a revenue grab.
It's a revenue grab because you're transferring ownership from that property to yourself individually to an entity. So just things to be aware of. But anyway, if you have questions on trust and LLC, as always, please reach out. We're happy to help with any questions you have. What else, Justin? Anything else you have?
No, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's been a little bit of a calmer week in the market. We got some rate improvement yesterday. I mean, it's gone the other way today, but we're hoping for a peace deal which will calm the markets and hopefully mortgage rates will come down with gas prices.
Guys, everything still boils down to Iran right now and the Strait of Hormuz. Again, I didn't know, I'd never heard of the Strait of Hormuz before this happened, but it's so relevant these days. So the clock is ticking. We're just waiting to see what happens. But again, as always, hope you have a good weekend. Give us a call. We're happy to help with any questions you have.
Have a great weekend, y'all.